Hello, my name is Brittany Fogelman, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my research problem, satisfaction in the workplace. So, a little bit of background about me. I am a senior graduating with degrees in communication studies and music industry with a minor in marketing. In my communication studies, I've wanted to put an emphasis on business communication specifically. I am hoping to move into a career in advertising or project management. I think a little bit of creative and a little bit of logic is something that I really need in my future job that will make me happy. So I've also got about 10 years of management experience, which means that I have seen a lot of satisfied and a lot of dissatisfied employees. So one thing that I think is really interesting is when you have employees that are dissatisfied, they will typically display certain behaviors. These behaviors can be, expressing their dissatisfaction by behavior towards leaving or expressed by constructive attempts to improve conditions or passively waiting for conditions to improve or dissatisfaction through allowing conditions to worsen. Job dissatisfaction predicts a lot about behaviors. Basically, the key is that if employees aren't happy, they'll respond somehow, and being able to pick up on whether employees are satisfied or dissatisfied is something that's really important. A lot of the research in this area is based around Maslow's hierarchy of needs and translating that into the workplace. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, your basic needs, your safety needs, social needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization. One of the interesting translations that I found for it that seemed to fit pretty well with my study was basic tools, trust and respect, matching the A's, confidence, and growth were all things that seem to be really important to finding satisfaction in the job place. A lot of the studies showed that satisfied workers, they work more hours, they take fewer sick days, and are overall healthier. They're more productive, they report a greater work-life balance, and they report more satisfaction in life overall. So I think that, finding satisfaction in our workplace and being able to understand when we're dissatisfied and when others are dissatisfied is really important. And that's why I decided to study it. So my method, I'll start out by giving a little bit of background and inspiration. So currently I am a supervisor at Sam's Club. And, it's an okay place to work for a college kid, but I started to look around and I started to notice that there were people that had been in the same exact job for, 10, 15, 20 years. And I thought that that was really interesting because a lot of the people that stayed in the same position were in the lower positions, such as door greeters or janitors or cashiers. Didn't have a ton of management that had been with the company for as long. And so, to me, that seems crazy of, how could you stand by the door 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week for 20 years and be happy? But I found that, the door greeters, they took their job the most seriously out of everybody. And when you talk to them, they seem to have this kind of self-importance about their job, which I thought was really interesting. And it kind of made me want to take a deeper look. At the same time, I came across a study by Wisniewski where they had asked people to categorize themselves into whether they were in a job, a career, or a calling. And they found a lot of interesting things about the correlation between classification and satisfaction. One of the most interesting things they found was that in any given job, you can have someone that classifies as all three of these categories. So if someone's a janitor, you'll have one janitor that, says it's a calling, while you can also have another janitor doing the exact same thing and call it a job. So that was really interesting to me and something that I kind of wanted to study in my own workplace. So I asked my coworkers. I altogether had about 21 coworkers. They were all of different positions, ages, income level. So I asked them to first categorize themselves into a job, a career, or a calling, where a job was focused on earning money to fund your life outside of work, a career was focused on advancement, and a calling was more focused on intrinsic rewards and social, societal benefits of doing your job. I then asked them to answer a true-false survey and rated the true-false questions with a numbering system. And I also asked them, a few questions in a short interview. That was really informal. I just kind of wanted to see what they would say when they talked. So I took all this info and I wanted to look for different correlations. So for results, there was definitely a correlation between categorization and satisfaction. One thing that was a little different in my study than the main inspiration was that I interviewed a lot of college kids, and even though they were relatively satisfied, they still categorize themselves as being in a job, which I think is really interesting because I even in myself feel like, the part-time work that I do is kind of, it kind of doesn't matter in the big scheme. Like, we all know we're going to be unhappy in this retail job and, it is what it is. So I thought that was kind of interesting to think about. I also thought that, one of the biggest correlations came in the interviews, where I found that the most satisfied people, they barely mention their specific job tasks. So, for example, the door greeters, when I asked them what they liked or didn't like, none of them said standing at the door checking the receipts. And that's basically their whole job description and function. So I thought that was really interesting. The majority, I had one lady who had been there a long time. She said she likes that people know her. She likes that she can put a smile on people's faces. She, has all these little tasks that she does that really in the big scheme of things aren't very important and are easily overlooked, but to her they mean a lot. And, obviously she was really satisfied and she'd been there for a really long time. So that was one thing I thought was interesting. The least satisfied people seem to do only the bare minimum. People that, they said, I really hate this job are the ones that you can always kind of see just standing around and not really smiling, just doing the basic, what they have to do to keep their job. So I thought that that was really interesting. In the big picture, it's obvious, but not so much. Just because we expect, a lot of younger kids in retail situations to be unhappy, but we don't expect, a lot of these elderly people as door greeters to be really happy. So that's what I found really interesting. So, for a discussion, I think that what I most found out from my study is that we have a lot of control over our satisfaction within our jobs. I think there's this myth that, if you go to college and if you study hard and, do all the things, you're going to land in this, lucky job someday. And I don't think that that's true. I think, we want it to be true, but I know a lot of people struggle when they leave school. And, I think we have a lot of control, whether, even if you're working in retail just to, while you're finding something else, there are ways that you can fit that job to what you need it to be. I also think that another big thing is comparing ourselves. So a lot of the younger kids from my survey mentioned, social media and seeing their older friends graduate and get these awesome jobs. And I think that that's one thing that's really damaging to people's job satisfaction, is comparing themselves to others. People put their best self out on social media, and, they're not necessarily going to post about getting yelled at by their boss or all the stress they're under. They're going to talk about things that, are exciting and interesting, and I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. I also think that we need to be flexible in identifying our own needs, because, one thing I identified is that I need to be doing something creative. And, if I see my friend get a big promotion in a banking job, I need to stop and say, is that really what I would want? And a lot of times the answer is no. And then, it kind of makes it easier to not come from a place of comparing yourselves to others. So, overall, I think that what I found and what a lot of the survey said was that you need to fit yourself to the job and not fit the job to you. You need to find your own ways to make what you're doing important. And when you find those ways and those things that make you feel important, that's where you'll find the most satisfaction within your job. So thank you for listening and have a great rest of your summer.